Well, what do we have here? Oh, it's just you. Didn't I tell you that you were struggling? You didn't believe me now, did you though? Well, either way, it's too late for you now. You can't even talk right now, can you? Typical LMS engine. You're all a waste of time and resources. I hope you enjoy your final journey, because that's the last thing you'll ever see.
No, he'll get better. You'll see.
What makes you think that? Look at him. He can't even talk. He can't do anything right now. He's not even good enough for spare parts. He's crippled beyond repair. It would be kinder to cut him up here instead of the scrapyard, because he's only going to suffer on the way down.
No, you're wrong.
I'm sorry, but he's right. The railway inspector ordered me to take him to the scrapyard. He doesn't even know who he is anymore. He didn't even recognize us this morning. Frederick awoke startled. He glanced nervously in all directions, but he was glad to find he was still safe in the shed, and no one else was there. The thoughts about the recent events were affecting him, even in his sleep. Frederick wasn't even sure if he wanted to see the railway inspector in the morning. If things did take a turn for the worst, Frederick would rather go peacefully in the shed than be caught up at the scrapyard. But he tried his best not to jump to conclusions, and eventually he settled down and went back to sleep. The next morning, Barry had brought the coaches to the platform for Goliath. As soon as he saw Goliath in the distance, he thought Lord Rathmore had returned. Is Lord Rathmore back already? Did he have a rebuild? I can't believe it. It looks like he's really back.
That's not Lord Rathmore.
But it looks like him. I mean, who else could it be? Barry's driver said nothing after that. He thought it best to let Barry find out for himself. Unfortunately, Barry's introduction to Goliath would not be a pleasant one. That morning, Goliath was in a very bad temper. He couldn't stand the harbour any longer, and he was too busy thinking of how to pay Frederick back. This made it hard for the driver to check his speed, and by the time he was able to, it was already too late. Even though Goliath was not going that fast when he reached the station, he was still going too fast to stop in time. The coach at the end of the train smashed through the bus, broke through the fence, and ended up in the middle of the road. The bus had to swerve suddenly to avoid it, and ended up falling into a ditch. As well as the coach at the very back of the train, 2 other coaches had also been derailed. It was lucky that nobody was aboard the train. The yard manager and the harbour workers rushed out to see if anyone was badly hurt. Luckily, some only suffered minor injuries. The workmen shouted through the windows, telling some of the passengers to get out of the way so they could smash the back window. A worker put the ladder up against the back of the bus and smashed the window to allow the driver and the passengers to get out. They had no idea when they would be able to get the bus itself out of the ditch, so it was the best course of action. The workmen made sure not a trace of glass lined the edges where the window was, and then the passengers and the driver climbed out. After thanking the workmen, the passengers went up to the waiting room to wait for their next train. The driver decided to stay behind with the workmen to find a way to get the bus out of the ditch. Goliath's driver was very upset. How could you do this? I know you don't really like this place, but that's no excuse for what you did. We're very lucky that bus wasn't in your way. Nobody would have survived otherwise. What's happened to you? You're not the engine I once knew. I'll tell you one thing, old boy. If this keeps up, it could be the last thing you ever do. Please, I don't want anything to happen to you. I've known you for years, and it would be too much for me to bear. Just then, the railway inspector arrived to explain the new arrangements to Frederick, but his attention was immediately drawn to Goliath's accident. He went over to Goliath's driver.
How did this happen? Ugh, it's just not the time to work on a railway, is it?
Goliath's driver explained what happened.
All we can do now is try and clear the wreckage. There's no sense in saying anything to him now. Let's just hope he hasn't damaged himself.
Frederick's driver noticed the railway inspector and went over to speak to him.
Haven't new arrangements been made?
Yes, but there's no time to discuss that now. You need to fire Frederick up and help clear the mess. and we'll need an engine to bring the breakdown train to lift the derailed coaches. Fortunately, Goliath and most of the coaches are still on the line, and no one was on the train.
Couldn't Barry go? He's fired up and ready.
Go ahead, Barry should be able to manage fine.
The railway inspector turned to Frederick's driver again. He told him to get Frederick to pull Goliath and the coaches that were still on the line out of the way, as Goliath's driver had tried to get him to move, but he had no intention of doing so.
Are you sure? What if he can't?
Life's too short for doubt. We'll never know till we try, so I can't believe I might have to cancel some of Frederick's trains again.
When the driver and fireman went over to Frederick, they lit his fire and it burned splendidly. Frederick even let off steam just to show how happy he felt. Even though Frederick always had a positive outlook in life, the dream he had made him appreciate it even more. Frederick, who had of course seen everything from the shed, was only too happy to finally get out. He was feeling so much better. He didn't know if it was the rest from the day before or determination to prove himself. Either way, he didn't care. He was determined to make the railway proud no matter what. Frederick soon coupled up to Goliath. Frederick was disgusted with Goliath.
Oh, shame on you. I was looking forward to hearing the arrangements.
Frederick moved Goliath and the intact coaches further up the platform to make it easier for the derailed coaches to be lifted back on the track when Barry arrives with the breakdown train. When they reached the top of the platform, the station master was waiting. The station master told Frederick to take the express. As most of the coaches were still intact, and Goliath was not willing to try, the station master didn't see why not. And besides that, he had already made a plan to make up for the 3 coaches that were derailed.
Goliath might have been damaged. We have no time to check him over, so if there's anything wrong, it's better for another engine to be there. And he doesn't seem to have any intention of trying to move the train in any case, so it's up to you, Frederick. I have arranged for a tank engine to add more coaches to the train at a station a few miles from here to replace the ones that got derailed. I know the express normally doesn't stop there, but we have no choice today. Can't have you going around with no brake coach, and you'll need more coaches for the additional passengers at the station the express normally stops at. Don't worry about it being late. It's a miracle there's even going to be an express starting from here at all today.
While Frederick's crew was getting him ready, the railway inspector had been talking to the station master, as he agreed to these arrangements. The railway inspector wanted to see Frederick off, but he was very busy that morning and had to go somewhere else. Though Frederick was more than willing to try, he thought the railway must have been desperate. He hadn't taken the train since yesterday, and there was no way they could possibly know if he was capable of taking the express or not. There was no turning back. Frederick had to try. When the passengers for the express were finally allowed on the platform, they were complaining about how delayed the train had been, but when they heard about how much effort was put into setting things right, they had a change of heart. It was lucky there was enough coaches for the passengers when the journey was to begin initially, but some had no choice but to stand. When everyone got in, Frederick and Goliath left the station.
Oh, I hope you don't make me do all the work. Whew! It's as if I don't have enough to do already. Passengers to the seaside, goods to the village stations and halts, and now I've got to clean up your mess on top of it.
Goliath didn't utter a single word. He was feeling very ashamed, and it was even worse having to travel with the very engine he was angry with.
And I thought your carelessness was your most pivotal character trait. It looks as though your incompetence exceeds even that. Come on, work harder. It's your train too. Come on, come on, come on.
When Barry arrived with the breakdown train, the workers set to work immediately. Though it took a long time, the coaches were finally back on the rails. Another engine took the coaches to the works so they could be repaired. A traction engine was borrowed from a farmer living a few miles down the road to pull the bus out of the ditch. When the traction engine got the bus out of the ditch, the bus was still very annoyed. His engine was full of water, and he had a very miserable time waiting in the ditch. He shouted over in the direction of the station, but I was the only engine there to hear it.
You engines don't belong on the roads. Stay off them. You're lucky we even bring passengers to and from your stations at all. Ungrateful little buggers.
With that, the traction engine towed the bus away. I found it quite hurtful, as it wasn't his fault the accident happened. As I took the breakdown train away, the workmen began clearing the wreckage off the road. The workmen still had a lot of work ahead of them, as it was going to take a very long time to repair the damage. That evening, after taking the express, Frederick and Goliath were in a shed. Railway workers were checking all over Goliath to see if he was damaged. The entire time, neither engine said anything to the other, but just as Frederick left to go back to the harbour, Goliath whispered to him.
I'm sorry.
Frederick never thought he would hear that from Goliath. He didn't know what to say, and he was also curious as to whether or not Goliath was damaged, but he was quite sure that would have to remain a mystery. When Frederick got back to the harbour, he was feeling worn out and depressed, as he thought it would just be a matter of time till he would be feeling overworked again, because he didn't get to speak to the railway inspector about the arrangements. But little did he know, the arrangements were already set in motion, and the railway inspector was waiting for him to tell him about the new arrangements. Frederick was most surprised.
We know you've had to work very hard lately, but it's clear you need a change. On the days when you have to take the holiday specials from now on, another engine will be taking your night goods so you have more time to rest. It wasn't easy to arrange this, as I had to go through lots of timetables.
Oh, thank you, Inspector. That's the best news I've heard in a long while.
Now Frederick finally had more time to rest, and was able to manage his trains better. Still had to take trains at night, but only on the days when he didn't have to manage the holiday specials. That didn't bother him, as he quite liked travelling at night. As for Goliath, there was no more trouble from him for the rest of the week, but the engines at the harbour still did not trust him. They were glad his stay was coming to an end, and they longed for Lord Rathmore to return. They also wanted what Lord Rathmore would have to say about Goliath's accident, and how nasty he was towards them initially, as Lord Rathmore was quite inquisitive and was bound to be curious about what was going on in his absence. But they thought it might be better if they didn't tell him, as they felt bad news would be the last thing Lord Rathmore would want to hear. After finally getting out of the works, they needed to make a decision.